大家好, I'm Nathan Rich, aka 火锅大王. Today marks another big milestone in the case of the new novel coronavirus. After much deliberation and examination, the World Health Organization said this today.
I'm declaring a public health emergency of international concern over the global outbreak of novel coronavirus. The main reason for this declaration is not because of what is happening in China, but because of what is happening in other countries.
Today, the World Health Organization held a meeting to discuss the novel coronavirus outbreak. Afterwards, they held a press conference. Let's take a look.
We have witnessed the emergence of a previously unknown pathogen, which has escalated into an unprecedented outbreak and which has been met by an unprecedented response.
Unprecedented response? Who is this freedom hater? I mean, didn't he watch Lawai86's video? You know, the video in which an unqualified English teacher just tells us the Chinese government is bad and their response has been horrible? Where the hell does the World Health Organization get off totally contradicting this kid who lives in America and likes to talk trash about China? Okay, wait, I gotta calm down. Maybe he meant unprecedented in a bad way.
As I have said repeatedly since my return from Beijing, the Chinese government is to be congratulated for the extraordinary measures it has taken to contain the outbreak, despite the severe social and economic impact those measures are having on the Chinese people.
No. Something is wrong here. Okay, let me just take a look at that Lawai86 video one more time. I mean, there's no way he could be wrong. He definitely knows more about world health issues than the World Health Organization.
We should praise the Chinese government's swift action during this crisis. No, we shouldn't.
Well, the World Health Organization is saying we should. I mean, am I crazy here?
We would have seen many more cases outside China by now, and probably deaths, if it were not for the government's efforts and the progress they have made to protect their own people and the people of the world.
I mean, these experts who are in China investigating say that China is moving quickly and effectively. So what's your evidence that they aren't?
We'd be foolish to believe the infection figures that come out of the state media from China.
Did you actually look at the screen you're showing us? It shows the sources right there. To be clear, these are the organizations you're telling us not to trust. The World Health Organization and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Okay, English teacher, we now don't trust the most trusted organizations in the world on disease because you told us not to. What's next on this roller coaster ride?
The cases are now in the high thousands, which means that this disease is more transmissible than SARS.
The fact that you can even say such a sentence puts you in the dangerously stupid category. You know you're spreading false information about this disease, right? That's not what the word transmissible means. The amount of people infected has nothing to do with how transmissible a disease is. This disease, according to actual research, is almost exactly the same as SARS when it comes to human transmission. In fact, the graph may show it as a little bit lower. So you can speak as sad sounding as you want, but people are starting to notice you don't know what the hell you're sad talking about. The only way this video could get worse is if you, I don't know, started using the very graph you just told us not to trust and made the dumbest mathematical mistake ever at the same time. But what are the odds of that?
The death rate from this virus seems to be about double the recovery rate.
Does it? Because the numbers I see on my screen, on your video, from the graph you just told us not to trust, are 106 deaths and 79 recoveries. Which number is it that you think is almost double the other? By the way, this is now the deaths and recoveries from that same page. Do you still think it's double the recovery rate? Never mind, I know the answer to that question. You do.
Which means that we don't know the actual percentage or odds of fatality from the coronavirus.
What? The death rate is not even close to double the recovery rate, which means we don't know the odds of fatality? What are you talking about? Of course we do. The dead divided by the infected. Obviously, that changes each day as we get more information. But the reason we do not know the ultimate percent has nothing to do with the graph you keep telling us not to trust and then using. It's just that we don't know the future. We don't know how many people will die. Just like if you ask what's the ultimate death rate for AIDS, we can't tell you because not everyone who will ever die of AIDS has done so. Are you following me, or?
We've been seeing videos that shed a bit more of a realistic light on how bad it actually is.
Care to show us those videos? Because the ones you're showing don't shed any realistic light on anything. One is a video of some people beating someone. One is someone passing out for reasons unknown. And then some videos showing an empty store. But of course, we already know that most of Wuhan has plenty of food. We know that because instead of listening to you in America using some random images of empty shelves, we can simply look at videos from people actually in Wuhan.
Quarantine Wuhan. Meat, produce. Frozen stuff.
Looks like there is generally a lot of stuff on the shelves.
Chris Buckley is a China-based correspondent for the New York Times. He's in Wuhan. Are stores running low?
In the stores that I've been able to visit over the past few days, there's food available. There's fresh produce on the shelves. Today I went to buy some oranges for myself and didn't have any trouble. And there were other residents lining up to buy turnips, carrots, cucumbers, apples.
Right, so while there may actually be some people who don't have easy access to food, the realistic light shows that generally speaking, most places we look in Wuhan, people have access to food.
The situation is, in fact, much worse than is being reported.
It is? Okay, please give us an example of something that's been proven but not reported.
Let's look at a timeline of what happened to see how slowly it's been dealt with and how the information was actively suppressed.
Really? Because, the World Health Organization seems to disagree with you.
The speed with which China detected the outbreak, isolated the virus, sequenced the genome, and shared it with WHO and the world are very impressive. So is China's commitment to transparency. In many ways, China is actually setting a new standard for outbreak response, and it's not an exaggeration.
But go on, kindergarten English teacher, tell me how stupid and wrong this guy is. Because you are the one who really understands the situation. Tell us all about this unreported stuff you know about.
On December 8th, the first case was reported in Wuhan.
Wrong. The first case was recorded. It wasn't reported to anyone. You're trying to make it seem like this is the date the Chinese government knew something was going on. They didn't. On December 8th, 2019, a patient in Wuhan complained of pneumonia-like symptoms and sought medical help at a local hospital. Now, I want you to picture a patient going into a hospital and complaining they have symptoms of pneumonia, like fever, mucus, or breathing troubles. The doctor says, "Fever, you say? Hang on, let me call the president of China and tell him there's something strange going on. Nurse, hand me the red phone." Is that how you think things work? Because this isn't a movie we're in, this is real life. Within days, many others reported similar problems, prompting health officials to launch an investigation. So this report is mentioning the 7 cases that came between December 8 and December 18. So my question to you is this. If you were a doctor and you got one pneumonia patient and then a second one, is that enough to start an official inquiry? No? So how many people is enough? The people in charge at that time thought the answer to that question was between 2 and 7 people. Because apparently when somewhere between 2 and 7 people had come in with pneumonia-like symptoms, they started an investigation. And within around 2 weeks, they had determined the disease was not known and notified the World Health Organization and released a statement. So what would you have done faster?
On January 1st, the Chinese government arrested 8 people for talking about the virus. The rumors that were being punished were the fact that the virus existed and was a threat to actual people.
Again, why are you even talking about this subject if you're just going to make stuff up the entire time? On January 1st, 8 doctors were basically scolded because they irresponsibly had publicly stated this virus was SARS, which it isn't. At this point in the story, the World Health Organization had already been notified there was a strange pneumonia-like disease observed. No one had died, and no one had observed human-to-human transmission. In other words, no reason to do anything but investigate further, and that's exactly what happened. Your intentional mischaracterization of their recklessness as wanting to tell the people the truth is revealing. What they did was completely irresponsible and easily could have led to even more deaths. Being right about something is not reason to break the law and risk lives. I wish America made this illegal. Then you would be in jail for the lives you're endangering.
Not the rumors telling people that they would be cured if they drank garlic water.
Or the rumors that the virus started in dead seafood, which you irresponsibly spread. Or the rumors in Taiwan that nicotine cures it. Or the rumor that the death count is twice that of the recovery count. What kind of irresponsible idiot would say that kind of thing, Lao-Y86? Oh, you. You are the type of person creating these rumors and this misinformation. You are the problem.
On January 14th, media who reported on the cases in Wuhan were arrested by police and had their phones and cameras searched for any information regarding the disease.
As usual, you're taking advantage of people who don't understand China's history to make it seem strange that reporting is tightly controlled here. One wrong report could send the country into a panic, causing real damage. You think a few hundred people dead from a virus is a big deal? If people in China listened to your garbage, they would all be panicking. Every store would be empty. The PLA would have to come protect everyone from being trampled to death as society devolved into kill or be killed. That's why at certain times in life, you know what? The safety of actual humans is more important than the perceived truth, the perspective that some reporter has. And in fact, dare I say it, yes, the safety of people is even more important than the actual objective truth. Grow up. And by the way, I don't see this item on your timeline for some reason. On January 5th, the World Health Organization issued a statement that advised against applying any restrictions of travel or trade on China. Well, I guess they're all just part of the conspiracy you're uncovering, right?
On January 18th, the Wuhan government held a 100,000 person banquet 3 miles from where the virus was confirmed to have come from. This was 2 days after 49 cases had been made public.
Wrong, in several ways, as usual. The Wuhan government didn't hold a 100,000 person anything. The magazine you're showing doesn't say anything about 100,000 people. The picture you're showing doesn't show 100,000 people. You keep talking about the number 100,000, which you clearly just made up. Also, the virus was not confirmed to have come from the wet market. In fact, the current belief is that it did not at all come from the wet market, which you would know if you had done any research for this video, instead of just chit-chatting with conspiracy theorists. And in your last video, didn't you say this actually 40,000 person thing was 2 days after 59 people were reported?
2 days before this massive harmonious event, 59 cases were reported in the area.
Wow, that changed quickly. I wonder, when will you eventually realize you keep telling people 100,000 even though literally nothing you're talking about or showing anyone says anything or has anything to do with the number 100,000? Sad. And for some strange reason, another thing missing from your timeline. Just a few days before the banquet, the World Health Organization said this, quote, "It is possible that there is a limited human-to-human transmission, potentially among families, but it is very clear right now that we have no sustained human-to-human transmission." Weird. So weird that you didn't put that on your timeline. It's almost like you want people to think everyone in China are just a bunch of evil people.
On January 19th, Chinese officials stated that the disease wasn't very infectious and that there was nothing to worry about.
Which pretty much mirrors what the WHO was saying about the disease. No need to do travel bans. No need for people to worry about human-to-human transmission. But then it looks like they realized it actually was human-to-human transmissible because suddenly they ordered everyone to wear masks and then quarantined the city. You know, based on the available evidence to them. Not based on being scared or panicked or what some English teacher in America said about it, but on actual information. If the WHO and the government and medical professionals are saying the disease doesn't seem very airborne, why would you close the city down? You wouldn't. And when new evidence comes along, you adapt.
On January 22nd, the government asked people in Wuhan to wear masks. However, the rules for mask wearing have just now become an official rule. They have to enforce it through fines because the populace has to be coerced to follow the rules due to lack of education.
You smug little beta. So it's your official opinion that the people of Wuhan are not educated, is it? Your opinion that Chinese people don't know about masks? And here you seem to be suggesting that the government should have been forcing people to wear masks even though there was little or no reason to believe the disease was transmissible between humans or even via the air. Wow, what a totalitarian nightmare state you're wishing that China was. Instead of doing that, they imposed mandatory mask requirements when the actual evidence suggested it was necessary. That's how all governments everywhere work. Then, as soon as they knew it was airborne and was killing people, they quarantined the entire city. An absolute marvel of the modern era that this can even be done. A beacon of inspiration to nations all across the world. A new milestone in progress of civilization. We can isolate enormous cities and treat the sick in them. But all you say about it is, however, 5 million people had already left. Right, because people do have the freedom to move around. Again, you can't just keep pretending that everyone magically knew this was a big deal the moment one person got sick. And you provide exactly zero evidence of that. They locked the city down when they knew there was a problem big enough to do so. According to this article in the Washington Post, an expert says it can spread human to human. And when was that? Just 2 days before the city was quarantined. Seems pretty goddamn fast to me.
Now the central government is being lauded as the only government in the world that could have dealt with this so swiftly.
Yeah, pretty much. Do you know of another government anywhere that could be this effective? I sure as hell don't. Can you imagine what would happen if the United States tried to quarantine all of Los Angeles in a matter of days? Hell no. No way. Then basically this video starts saying how the central government needs to approve what public information gets out about the virus. Yeah, thank God for that. And he sort of just rambles about how the Wuhan mayor is some kind of patsy that's done nothing wrong, which is kind of strange and backwards. I mean, don't get me wrong, I actually don't blame this guy as much as some people do. But you seem to be under the impression that someone else was in charge of Wuhan when the banquet was promoted. In your last video, you blamed the central government for that. Somehow, you just seem to live in an upside-down world. And he rambles about how he says the true information isn't getting out of China or something, and then says,
media on all levels from all countries are now congratulating the Chinese government in its swift efforts to contain the virus, all while ignoring how it ended up so bad in the first place.
Yes, everyone in the entire world is wrong except for you, little guy. You have it all figured out. A few days to quarantine an entire city? Too slow. If only more news reporters would have been allowed to just say whatever they wanted about the disease, like calling it SARS or saying it kills up to 50% of the people who get it, both things you've said this week, then everyone would have been much better. There wouldn't have been panic at all up and down China, causing way more deaths than a few hundred. Not at all. Then trust him, he says. The level of control the government has is exactly why the disease spread in the first place.
Do not think for 1 second that the hero status of the CCP and how it's dealing with this is well deserved.
You know, I'm still waiting for your argument. So far, all you've said is they stopped some reporters from saying things, we don't know what, and they stopped doctors from saying things publicly which weren't true. And they agreed with the World Health Organization that travel bans weren't needed and human-to-human infections seemed quite rare. Everything they've done to react to development seems pretty fast to me. And I hate to just go on and on defending the CCP, because honestly, this disaster isn't about the CCP. It's about mostly the residents of Wuhan, who need the right kind of attention. But little haters like you just try to make everything some far-flung example of how CCP bad, China bad, Chinese people uneducated and stupid, blah, blah, blah. The fact is, nearly every single outbreak I can find any record of ever was dealt with more slowly and less effectively than this one. But your fear-mongering and stigmatizing continues.
If you look at a flight map, you can actually see all the flights coming out of China. This is a problem in itself. We still have people leaving from other airports in China to go to countries abroad.
Oh no, Chinese people are flying places? Even though a few hundred people died from something? Well, I guess the World Health Organization are just a bunch of idiots when they say this. Today.
There is no reason for measures that unnecessarily interfere with international travel and trade. So WHO doesn't recommend limiting transfer or trade and movement.
But wait, does this guy know some idiot in America says the entire economy of the world should grind to a halt? You know, as all flights from China shut down because he promises us it's a good idea. Let's write emails to this WHO guy and let him know immediately. And then here we go with more conspiracy crap. He says the government is just hiding the truth. There's actually so many cases now. His evidence?
The amount of beds in the hospitals that were already in Wuhan is well enough to be equipped to cover the cases that the Chinese government is declaring. So why are they rushing to build a hospital within hours and then being lauded as the heroes for doing so if it's really not that bad?
Because, you idiot. Hospitals aren't just for the cases that are declared. They're for anyone at all, regardless of if they have this disease or another. And believe it or not, there are more people getting checked for the disease than actually have it. There are people there for other reasons. And there are suspected cases. And there are confirmed cases. Not to mention, but I'm not sure if you realize this, but this disease is communicable. That means the cases will go up until it's all under control. I pray to God the Chinese government never listens to this guy. Just imagine what the situation would be like if we did what this idiot wants. The moment anyone goes into any hospital with any symptoms, we would immediately shut down all flights in and out of China. Then we would quarantine all cities and force everyone to wear masks at the end of a gun. But we would refuse to build any hospitals for the patients. Then he complains that people got arrested for overcharging for fake masks. His complaint seems to be that not enough people got arrested. Interestingly, more people got arrested for overcharging for masks than got arrested for causing the 2008 financial collapse. But not enough for him. He doesn't like people who just make money off of tragedy. You know, like by making a hatred-inspired, fear-mongering video about them. He just hates that. Then goes on about how unity against issues is bad or something, and says it's the government's fault that some people have attacked people from Hubei province or something, and how some people in tiny towns are making barricades to prevent non-locals. Yes, it's the fault of the government that these people are afraid of getting disease. What's your solution to this? Send the army to them? Then you would just show pictures and call it a martial law. You have no solutions because you're not trying to help or fix anything. You're just milking this by making more and more hatred. You are disgusting. Then he goes on and on about how the government is all to blame. He makes promises that everyone in the government knew everything about the situation with no evidence. Then he criticizes the government for like 50 different unrelated things and then starts saying stuff like, if we deserve to be censored. We who, dude? Americans? You aren't in China and you don't know anything about it. We Californians? Are you censored from saying something?
I promise you, the Chinese government is not telling the truth.
I promise you are not telling the truth. No government has ever told the entire truth about every outbreak exactly as everything happens. If they did, our world wouldn't exist anymore. Something you would have realized already if you matured rather than got stuck in some weird spiral of hatred towards Chinese people and their government. He pretends to talk to the general Chinese population, who for the most part can't understand him because he refuses to put subtitles on his videos. He knows if they could understand him, he would have to delete even more comments proving him wrong. They aren't his fans. His fans are people who hate China and the Chinese government no matter what you say. Then he goes on to advertise for a VPN for a full minute. You know, I don't personally really care about governments or big corporations much. I pretty much just stick to myself. But when I see someone so hell-bent on attacking the CCP and the Chinese people, yeah, I do raise an eyebrow. Especially when that person ignores so many obvious parallels with other governments and groups of people. Nearly everyone acts the same when they are sick, stressed, under quarantine. There's not a whole lot of mystery going on here. We know people will exaggerate, lie, think they're doing the world a favor by exposing what they think is real. We know in other ways some things won't be reported on or recognized at all. We know someone is having a tough time that we can't help. This is called reality, and our job as a species is to close that gap. We want to get less exaggerated fear-based rumors like those you produce, because you're anti-Chinese people and anti-Chinese government. We want less of you. And in the meantime, we want more of the ability to help those unnoticed few. Why don't you just listen to the words of the WHO before you make your next rumor-based conspiracy theory video about how all Chinese people are uneducated and the CCP is to blame for everything? Write these words down. Study them like your students study the word rainbow.
This is the time for facts, not fear. This is the time for science, not rumors. This is the time for solidarity, not stigma.
Any questions? Class dismissed. Thanks, everybody. 谢谢.